You have the wrong room.
I realize that now. I should go.
No, I don't think you should.
The train pulled into the station with a loud screech that made Nisha Kapoor grip her small suitcase tighter. She was 23 years old and had spent most of her life in the peaceful corridors of Sacred Heart Girls Hostel in Kerala. The nuns had raised her after her parents passed away when she was only 5. Now, with her teaching degree fresh in hand, she was ready to start a new chapter at Riverside School. A modest institution in the hills of Maharashtra, Nisha stepped onto the platform, her eyes wide with excitement and nervousness. The city was bigger than she had imagined. People rushed past her in every direction. Vendors shouted about their products. The smell of street food mixed with diesel fumes filled her nostrils. She clutched the acceptance letter from Riverside School in one hand and her phone in the other, trying to locate the taxi stand, an elegant stranger before she could take another step. A woman in a crisp navy blue uniform approached her with a warm smile. The woman held a small sign that read Miss Nisha Kapoor in beautiful handwriting. Miss Kapoor, I have been waiting for you, the woman said politely. I am Mira, sent to collect you. The car is waiting just outside. Nisha blinked in surprise. She had not arranged for any private transport. The school had mentioned she would need to take a local taxi, but perhaps they had changed the plan and forgotten to inform her. The woman seemed genuine enough, and Nisha was too tired from the long journey to question it deeply. Thank you, but I think there might be some confusion, Nisha said hesitantly. I was told to take a taxi to Riverside School, Mira smiled reassuringly. Everything has been arranged, miss. Please follow me. We should not keep the car waiting. Something in Mira's confident manner made Nisha feel safe. She followed the woman through the crowded station and into the parking area, where a gleaming silver car waited. It was unlike anything Nisha had ever seen up close. The vehicle was elegant and expensive, with tinted windows and chrome details that sparkled in the afternoon sun. Into a different world as Nisha settled into the plush leather seat. She noticed how quiet everything became. The chaos of the station disappeared behind soundproof glass. Soft music played from hidden speakers. The air smelled faintly of jasmine and sandalwood. She felt like she had stepped into a completely different world. The car moved smoothly through the city's streets, but Nisha soon realized they were not heading toward the hills. Instead, they were driving through an area filled with grand houses and tree-lined boulevards. Tall gates guarded massive properties. Gardens that looked like they belonged in magazines stretched out behind high walls. Mira, I think we might be going the wrong way, Nisha said, leaning forward. Riverside School is in the countryside, not in the city. Mira glanced at her through the rearview mirror, but did not seem concerned. We have arrived, miss, she said simply, as the car turned into a long driveway. The magnificent estate. What appeared before Nisha made her heart skip a beat. The mansion that stood at the end of the driveway was breathtaking. It was built in a classical style with cream-colored stone, tall pillars and balconies that overlooked perfectly maintained gardens. Fountains danced in the center of the lawn. Peacocks wandered freely among the flower beds. Everything looked like it had been touched by magic. Nisha felt panic rising in her chest. This was definitely not her school. This was not where she was supposed to be. She needed to explain the mistake immediately. The car stopped at the entrance, and Mira opened the door for her. Nisha stepped out, her legs shaky. She looked up at the grand entrance and saw a man standing at the top of the stairs. Even from a distance, she could tell he was someone important. Meeting Rohan Singhania. Descended the stairs with the kind of grace that came from years of confidence. He was tall and well-built, wearing a simple white shirt and dark trousers. Yet he looked more impressive than anyone Nisha had ever seen. His face was striking with strong features, dark eyes that seemed to notice everything, and an expression that was both serious and curious. When he reached her, Nisha had to look up to meet his gaze. His presence was overwhelming in a way she could not quite explain. You are not Kavita Malhotra, he said, his voice deep and smooth. It was not a question, but a statement of fact. No, I am Nisha Kapoor, she replied, finding her voice despite her nervousness. I think there has been a terrible mistake. I was supposed to go to Riverside School. I have a teaching position there. I do not know why your driver brought me here. The man studied her face carefully. His expression was unreadable, but something flickered in his dark eyes. Interest, perhaps? Or curiosity? I am Rohan Singhania, he said after a moment. And you are absolutely right. This is a mistake. He paused, then added something that made Nisha's breath catch. But it might be the most fortunate mistake either of us has ever encountered. He turned to Mira. Verify her identity completely. Mira pulled out a tablet and typed quickly. Within seconds, she nodded. She is exactly who she claims to be, sir. Nisha Kapoor, 23 years old, graduate from Sacred Heart Teacher Training College. Valid employment contract with Riverside School beginning next week. Rohan's jaw tightened slightly. He looked at Nisha again, this time with an intensity that made her feel exposed and strangely excited at the same time. Come inside, he said. We need to talk. Strange invitation. Every instinct told Nisha to refuse to demand to be taken to her school immediately. But there was something in Rohan's voice, something in the way he looked at her, that made her want to understand what was happening. Against all logic and everything she had been taught about being careful with strangers, she nodded. She followed him through massive wooden doors into a world of marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and artwork that probably cost more than she would earn in 10 lifetimes. He led her to a study filled with books, comfortable chairs, and windows that overlooked the beautiful gardens. Please, Rohan said, gesturing to a chair. Nisha sat carefully, her back straight, her hands folded in her lap. Rohan remained standing, looking out the window with his hands in his pockets. I was expecting someone else today, he began, his voice quiet. Someone sent by an agency to help me with a very specific problem? Nisha waited, her heart beating fast. Rohan turned to face her. My father passed away 8 months ago. He left me everything, his business empire, his properties, his wealth. But there was one condition in his will. I must be married before I turn 35, which happens in exactly 3 months. If I am not married by then, everything goes to distant relatives who will destroy everything my father built. He paused. Searching her face, I hired an agency to find someone willing to enter a temporary marriage arrangement. Business only. But the woman they sent seemed cold and calculating. Then you arrived instead, completely by accident. And when I look at you, I see something real, something genuine. You have not been corrupted by this world of wealth and power. Nisha felt like the room was spinning. This man, this stranger, was asking her to participate in something impossible. I know this sounds insane, Rohan continued, but I am asking you to consider helping me. 3 months of pretending to be engaged, then married. In return, I will give you enough money to build any life you want. You will never have to depend on anyone again. Nisha should have refused immediately. This violated everything she believed in about honesty and truth. But as she looked at Rohan, she saw something beneath his controlled exterior. Loneliness, desperation. A man trapped by circumstances beyond his control. What would I truly get from this? She asked softly. Rohan seemed surprised by her directness. Financial security? Freedom? What else would you want? Nisha thought about her 23 years of living within walls and rules chosen by others. She thought about the safe, predictable life waiting for her at Riverside School. Then she looked at this mysterious man who somehow made her feel more alive in 10 minutes than she had felt in years. I want to truly live, she whispered. I have spent my whole life being safe and careful. I want to experience something real, even if it starts as something false. Rohan Singhania stared at Nisha for a long moment, as if trying to decide whether she truly understood what she was agreeing to. The silence in the study stretched between them like a fragile thread. Outside, the peacocks called out in the garden, their cries echoing through the perfect stillness of the estate. You would be giving up your teaching position, Rohan said carefully. You would be living here, in this mansion, pretending to be someone you are not. The media will scrutinize you. My business associates will question you. Society women will try to find flaws in your story. This will not be easy, Nisha. Nisha felt her name on his lips like a small electric shock. No one had ever said her name quite like that before, with such careful attention, as if it mattered. "I understand the risks," she replied, though her hands trembled slightly in her lap. "But I have spent 23 years living the life others chose for me. Perhaps it is time I chose something for myself, even if that choice seems completely mad to everyone else." A small smile touched the corner of Rohan's mouth. It transformed his serious face into something warmer, more human. "Then we have an agreement. I will have my lawyers draw up a contract. Everything will be specified clearly. The duration, the compensation, the expectations. You will have your own suite of rooms, your own privacy. This arrangement is purely business." But even as he said the words, something in his eyes suggested that he was not entirely convinced of their truth. The first evening Mira showed Nisha to her rooms on the second floor of the mansion. The suite was larger than the entire dormitory she had shared with 5 other girls at
Sacred Heart.
A massive bed dominated the bedroom, covered in silk sheets the color of cream. The bathroom had a tub big enough to swim in. The sitting room had floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the gardens, now painted gold by the setting sun. "Mr. Singhania has requested that you join him for dinner at 8, Mira said kindly. "I will return at 7:30 to help you dress. If you would like." After Mira left, Nisha walked slowly through the rooms. Touching the expensive furniture, the soft fabrics, the fresh flowers arranged in crystal vases, everything felt unreal, like she had stepped into someone else's life by mistake. She thought about the simple room waiting for her at Riverside School, the modest salary she would have earned, the quiet, predictable years that would have followed. Then she thought about Rohan's intense dark eyes, the way he had looked at her as if she was a puzzle he desperately wanted to solve. Dinner and discoveries at precisely 8. Nisha found herself seated across from Rohan at a dining table that could have seated 20 people. Crystal glasses caught the light from the chandelier above. Silver cutlery gleamed against white china. A staff member she had not met before served them courses that Nisha could barely name. Each dish more elaborate than the last. Rohan had changed into a dark suit that made him look even more formidable. But his manner was gentler now, less commanding than it had been that afternoon. "Tell me about your life at Sacred Heart," he said, cutting into his food with precise movements. "What was it like growing up there?" Nisha hesitated. No one had ever asked her about her childhood with genuine interest before. Most people heard she was an orphan and quickly changed the subject, uncomfortable with the idea of loss. "It was quiet," she said slowly. "Structured. The nuns were kind but strict. We had routines for everything. Wake at 6, prayers at 6:30, breakfast at 7, classes until 4. Evening prayers at 6, dinner at 7, lights out at 9. Every single day was the same." "That sounds suffocating," Rohan observed. "Sometimes it was," Nisha admitted. "But it was also safe. I always knew what to expect. There were no surprises, no uncertainties. After my parents died, I think I needed that stability for a while. And now?" Rohan asked, his eyes fixed on her face. "Now I think I have had enough safety to last a lifetime," Nisha said, surprising herself with her honesty. "Now I want to feel something other than calm and quiet." Something shifted in Rohan's expression. He set down his fork and leaned back in his chair, studying her with that intense gaze that made her feel both nervous and thrilling. "This world I live in," he said quietly, "it is anything but calm and quiet. It is full of people who smile while plotting your downfall. It is full of beautiful lies and ugly truths. Are you certain you want to experience it?" "I am not certain of anything," Nisha replied honestly. "But I would rather try and fail than never try at all." Learning the part the next morning, Rohan's world descended upon Nisha like a storm. A stylist named Priya arrived with racks of expensive clothes. A etiquette coach named Mrs. Desai came to teach her how to walk, sit, and speak like someone born into wealth. A jewelry expert brought cases of diamonds and explained which pieces suited which. Occasions Nisha felt overwhelmed by the attention, the transformation they were attempting. She stood in front of mirrors while strangers pinned and tucked and adjusted, turning her into someone she did not recognize. But it was Rohan's presence that unsettled her most. He appeared periodically throughout the day, watching the transformation with an unreadable expression. Once, when the stylist had dressed Nisha in an elegant emerald sari that brought out the gold flecks in her brown eyes, Rohan stopped mid-conversation with his phone and simply stared. "Perfect," he said quietly, and Nisha felt warmth spread through her chest at his approval. The first cracks. The third evening. Nisha found Rohan in the library, surrounded by financial reports and contracts. He looked exhausted, his tie loosened, his hair slightly disheveled from running his hands through it. For the first time, he looked vulnerable rather than invincible. "May I come in?" Nisha asked from the doorway. Rohan looked up, and his tired expression softened. "I could use the distraction." Nisha entered the library, her favorite room in the entire mansion because of all the books. She had spent hours here over the past few days reading everything she could find. She settled into the chair across from Rohan's desk. "You look troubled," she observed. Rohan laughed, but it was a bitter sound. "My father's company is more complicated than I realized. There are debts I did not know about, partnerships that are falling apart, employees who are considering leaving. Inheriting his empire means inheriting all his problems as well. Is that why the marriage clause matters so much?" Nisha asked gently. "Because without the inheritance, you cannot save the company." "Exactly," Rohan said. "My father built something remarkable, but he also made enemies. If I lose control of the company, those enemies will tear it apart and sell the pieces. Hundreds of people will lose their jobs. My father's legacy will be destroyed." He looked at Nisha with raw honesty. "I am not doing this just for money or pride. I am doing it because I owe it to him, even though he was a difficult man to love. I owe it to the people who depend on this company." Nisha felt her heart ache for him. Beneath the wealth and power, Rohan was just a man carrying the weight of impossible expectations. Just as she had carried the weight of being the perfect orphan girl who never caused trouble. "You do not have to do this alone," she said softly. Rohan met her eyes, and something passed between them. An understanding, a connection that went deeper than their business arrangement. Unexpected moments. Days began to blur together in a strange rhythm. Mornings were spent preparing for her role. Afternoons involved meetings with wedding planners and photographers, creating the illusion of an engagement. Evenings belonged to quiet dinners with Rohan, where they talked about everything except their arrangement. Nisha learned that Rohan loved classical music, but never had time to attend concerts. She discovered that he had wanted to be an architect before his father insisted he studied business. She found out that he had a younger sister named Anjali, who lived in London and rarely spoke. To him, after their father's death, Rohan learned that Nisha wrote poetry in secret notebooks she kept hidden under her mattress. He discovered that she had never tasted chocolate until she was 15. He found out that she dreamed of traveling to places she had only read about in books. One rainy afternoon, Nisha found Rohan playing piano in the music room. She had not known he could play. The melody was haunting and beautiful, filled with longing. She stood in the doorway, listening until he finished. "That was beautiful," she whispered. Rohan turned on the bench, looking almost embarrassed. "I have not played in years. My father said it was a waste of time." "It is not a waste," Nisha said firmly. "Beauty is never a waste." Something in Rohan's expression cracked open. He stood and crossed to where she stood, stopping just inches away. Nisha could feel the heat radiating from his body. Her breath caught in her throat. "Nisha," he said. Her name, a question, and a confession all at once. But before either of them could move, Mira appeared in the hallway, calling for Mr. Singhania about an urgent phone call. The moment shattered like glass. As the weeks passed, the lines between pretense and reality began to blur. They held hands for photographs, and Nisha forgot they were acting. They practiced their engagement story for dinner parties, and the words started to feel true. They slow danced in the ballroom to prepare for upcoming events. And Nisha felt safe in Rohan's arms in a way that had nothing to do with business arrangements. The problem was becoming clear. Nisha was falling in love with a man who had hired her to play a part. And worse, she suspected Rohan was falling for her too. Though he fought against it with every carefully controlled breath, one night, after a particularly exhausting society dinner, where they had played the perfect engaged couple. Rohan walked Nisha to her suite. They stood outside her door, neither wanting to say goodnight. "You were remarkable tonight," Rohan said quietly. "Everyone believed we were truly in love." "Perhaps that is because it was not entirely acting," Nisha heard herself say. Rohan went very still. His dark eyes searched her face in the dim hallway light. "Nisha, we cannot." "I know," she interrupted. "I know this is just an arrangement. I know it ends in 3 months. But I cannot help what I feel, Rohan. I have never been good at pretending about things that matter." Rohan reached out and gently touched her cheek, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw. The gesture was so tender, it made Nisha's eyes sting with tears. "I am the last person you should have feelings for," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I am asking you to lie to everyone. I am using you to solve my problems. You deserve someone better, someone honest and good." "You are good," Nisha whispered. "You are just afraid to believe it." Rohan closed his eyes as if her words caused him pain. Then he dropped his hand and stepped back, rebuilding the walls between them. "Good night." "Nisha," he said formally, as Nisha watched him walk away down the long corridor. She realized something terrifying and wonderful. This arrangement had stopped being about money, or freedom, or adventure. Somewhere along the way, it had become about love. And she had no idea how their story would end. 6 weeks had passed since Nisha arrived at the mansion. The wedding was scheduled for 10 days from now, a grand affair that would unite two of the most prominent business families in the country. Except one half of that union was built on carefully constructed lies. Nisha stood in the bridal boutique, surrounded by mirrors that reflected her image from every angle. The wedding dress was a masterpiece of silk and intricate embroidery, worth more than most people earned in a year. The designer fussed around her, adjusting the fall of the fabric, pinning the veil just so. But Nisha felt hollow inside. She looked like a bride, but she felt like an actress playing a role that had become too painful to continue. Rohan sat in a chair nearby, supposedly reviewing the guest list on his tablet. But Nisha caught him watching her in the mirrors, his expression unguarded for just a moment. In his eyes, she saw the same conflict that tore at her own heart. They had been so careful since that night outside her suite. They maintained perfect distance. They spoke only about logistics and schedules. They never touched unless cameras were present. The warmth that had been growing between them was locked away behind walls of professionalism, but Nisha could feel it still, humming beneath the surface like electricity waiting to spark, a visitor from the past that evening. As Nisha was reading in the library, Mira appeared at the door looking troubled. "Miss Nisha, there is someone here to see you," she said hesitantly. "A Sister Margaret from Sacred Heart? She says it is urgent." Nisha's heart stopped. Sister Margaret had been like a mother to her during her years at the hostel. The elderly nun had taught her literature and encouraged her dreams. But Nisha had not contacted Sacred Heart since leaving. She had been too ashamed of the lies she was living. Sister Margaret entered the library, her familiar face lined with concern. She wore her simple habit, looking completely out of place among the mansion's luxury. When she saw Nisha, relief flooded her features. "Child, I have been so worried," Sister Margaret said, embracing Nisha tightly. "Riverside School contacted us when you never arrived. They were concerned something had happened to you. I have been searching for weeks." Guilt crashed over Nisha like a wave. "Sister, I am so sorry. I should have called. I should have explained." Sister Margaret pulled back, studying Nisha's face. "Explain what, dear? What is happening here? The newspapers say you are engaged to Rohan Singhania, but I know you. This is not like you. Tell me the truth." Confession and consequences. Nisha could not lie to Sister Margaret. The words poured out of her like a dam breaking. She told the nun everything. The mistaken pickup, the desperate proposal, the arrangement they had made, the money she had agreed to accept, the wedding that was scheduled to happen in 10 days. Sister Margaret listened in silence, her weathered hands folded in her lap. When Nisha finished, the nun closed her eyes as if praying for guidance. "Oh, child," she said finally, "what have you gotten yourself into?" "I know it is wrong," Nisha whispered, tears streaming down her face. I know I am lying to everyone. But sister, for the first time in my life, I felt like I had a choice. I felt like I was choosing my own path, even if that path was crooked. And this man, Rohan Singhania, Sister Margaret, asked gently, "Do you have feelings for him?" Nisha could not stop the sob that escaped her throat. "I love him, sister. I did not mean to, but I do. And I think he might love me too, but he will never admit it because I am just part of a business transaction to him." Sister Margaret reached out and took Nisha's hands. "Love built on deception cannot flourish, my dear. You must tell him the truth about how you feel, and you must decide if this is truly the life you want, or if you are running away from something else." Rohan's hidden truth that night. Unable to sleep, Nisha wandered through the mansion's quiet halls. She found herself outside Rohan's study, where light still spilled from beneath the door. She could hear his voice speaking on the phone. She should have walked away, but something made her pause and listen. "I know the plan was to end the arrangement after the wedding," Rohan was saying, his voice strained. "But things have changed, Vikram. I cannot explain it, but I cannot let her go. She is not like anyone I have ever met. She sees me, really sees me, not the company or the money or the power. Just me." Nisha's heart hammered in her chest. "I know it is insane," Rohan continued. "I know I am the one who set up this whole arrangement. But somewhere along the way, it stopped being fake for me. I love her, Vikram. I am in love with a woman I hired to play a part, and I have no idea what to do about it." There was a pause as the person on the other end spoke. "No," Rohan said firmly. "I will not tell her. She deserves her freedom. After the wedding, after everything is finalized with the company, I will let her go as we agreed. I will give her the money and her freedom, even if it destroys me. That is what she deserves." Nisha backed away from the door, her mind reeling. Rohan loved her. He truly loved her, but he was willing to let her go because he thought that was what she wanted. The next morning, Nisha requested a private meeting with Rohan in the garden. He agreed, though his expression was guarded. They walked among the roses in the early morning light. The dew still sparkling on the petals. "Sister Margaret came to see me yesterday," Nisha began, her voice steady, despite her racing heart. Rohan went pale. "I see. She must have been shocked by our arrangement. But that is not what I want to talk about. Rohan, I overheard your phone call last night. I did not mean to eavesdrop, but I heard what you said to Vikram." Rohan stopped walking, his jaw tight. "Then you know I have been a fool." "No," Nisha said, stepping closer to him. "You know what I heard? I heard a man who is as terrified as I am. I heard a man who is fighting against his own feelings because he thinks he is protecting me." She took a deep breath. "Rohan, I fell in love with you weeks ago. Every careful conversation, every stolen glance, every moment we pretended for the cameras, and every moment when it was just us. I fell in love with the man who plays piano when he thinks no one is listening. The man who worries about his employees more than his profits. The man who carries the weight of his father's dreams even though they nearly crushed him." Rohan stared at her as if she had spoken in a language he could not comprehend. "Nisha, you cannot love me. I brought you here under false pretenses. I asked you to lie for me." "Yes, you did," Nisha agreed. "And I said yes because I wanted to experience life. But you know what I discovered? Life is not about grand mansions or expensive clothes or traveling to exotic places. Life is about finding someone who makes you feel truly seen. Someone who makes you want to be brave. Someone who makes every moment feel more real than anything you have experienced before." She reached up and touched his face, feeling him tremble under her palm. "You are that person for me, Rohan. You make me feel alive." Breaking down walls, Rohan closed his eyes, leaning into her touch, as if it was the only thing keeping him standing. When he opened them again, they were filled with raw emotion that took Nisha's breath away. "I love you," he said, his voice breaking. "I have loved you since the moment you stood in my entrance hall and refused to be intimidated by me. I have loved you through every fake smile we gave photographers and every real conversation we shared in private. I love your kindness, your courage, your terrible habit of reading 3 books at once and leaving them scattered around the library." He pulled her close. his arms wrapping around her as if he would never let her go. "But I do not deserve you, Nisha. You are good and honest. And I have built my life on compromises and calculations." "Then let me be the one decision you make with your heart instead of your head," Nisha whispered against his chest. "Let me be the one truth in a world of necessary lies." Rohan pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. "If we do this, if we make this real, there is no going back. The wedding in 10 days will not be for show. It will be forever. Are you ready for that?" "I have been ready since the day I walked into your library and saw you looking at me like I was the answer to a question you had been asking your whole life," Nisha replied. Rohan smiled then, a real smile that transformed his entire face, and then he kissed her. Not for cameras or appearances, but because they loved each other desperately and completely. The kiss was everything Nisha had imagined, and more. Gentle yet passionate, tender yet urgent. Filled with all the weeks of careful distance they had maintained. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Rohan rested his forehead against hers. "I need to tell you something," he said. "The marriage clause in my father's will? There is more to it than I originally explained." Nisha's heart skipped. "What do you mean?" The final secret. Rohan took her hand and led her to a bench beneath a flowering tree. "My father was a complicated man. He built an empire, but he destroyed his personal relationships in the process. My mother left him when I was 10 because he cared more about his company than his family. My sister refuses to speak to me because she blames our family's wealth for ruining her life." He looked down at their joined hands. "The marriage clause was not just about inheritance. My father left a letter with his lawyer to be given to me after I married. In it, he explained that he wanted me to understand what really matters in life. Not money or power or success, but genuine human connection. He said he hoped I would find what he never did. Real love." Tears filled Nisha's eyes. "He wanted you to be happy. He wanted me to be whole," Rohan corrected. "And somehow, through this convoluted plan, through hiring an agency and having them send the wrong woman to my door, I found exactly that. I found you." Nisha laughed through her tears. "So we are getting married because of a misunderstanding that led to an arrangement that turned into actual love." "It sounds ridiculous when you say it like that," Rohan admitted, grinning. "It sounds perfect," Nisha corrected. A new beginning. The wedding 10 days later was everything the media expected. Elegant, expensive, and filled with important people. But for Nisha and Rohan, it was something else entirely. It was a promise made with full hearts. It was a commitment born not from necessity, but from choice. As Nisha walked down the aisle in her beautiful dress, she caught sight of Sister Margaret in the front row, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. The nun had agreed to attend after Nisha and Rohan explained everything, including their real feelings for each other. When Rohan took Nisha's hands at the altar, his eyes were bright with emotion. The vows they spoke were traditional, but the meaning behind them was uniquely theirs. They were promising to be honest in a world of pretense, to be vulnerable in a world that demanded strength, to choose love even when it seemed impossible. At the reception, as they danced their first dance as husband and wife, Rohan whispered in Nisha's ear, "Thank you for getting into the wrong car that day." Nisha laughed, the sound bright and free. "Thank you for refusing to let me leave. I'll never let you go," Rohan promised. "Not for all the companies or inheritances or mansions in the world. You are the only fortune that matters to me now." Epilogue. 6 months later, Nisha stood in the doorway of what used to be a guest room, but was now her writing studio. Notebooks filled with poetry covered the desk. Books lined the shelves. Through the window, she could see Rohan in the garden, laughing with Anjali, who had finally come home to reconcile with her brother. The mansion no longer felt like a palace or a prison. It felt like home. Not because of its grandeur, but because it held the people she loved. Sister Margaret visited every month, bringing news from Sacred Heart and always staying for tea. Nisha had established a scholarship fund for girls from the hostel, giving them opportunities she had once only dreamed of. Rohan's company had stabilized under his leadership. He had made changes his father never would have dared, prioritizing employee welfare alongside profits, and the results had been remarkable. but more importantly, he had learned to play piano again. Music filled the mansion now, mixing with laughter and conversation and life. That evening, as they sat together in the library reading, Rohan looked up from his book. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Getting into that car? Agreeing to my insane proposal?" Nisha set down her own book and crossed to him, settling into his lap. "Every day, I thank whatever force in the universe sent me to the wrong address, because it led me to exactly the right place." Rohan kissed her softly. "I love you, Mrs. Singhania." "I love you too," Nisha replied. "Even though you are terrible at keeping your library organized." He laughed, the sound warm and genuine. Outside, the sun was setting over the gardens, painting everything gold. Inside, two people who had found each other through the most unlikely circumstances held each other close. Their story had started with a mistake, a misunderstanding, a desperate arrangement. But it had become something neither of them had expected. It had become a love story for the ages. Real, honest, and utterly unbreakable. And they lived happily, authentically, and completely in love for all the days that followed. The end.